floor now?
Yes, go.
All right. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our April version of our author's review. Of course, I'm Alex Devereux, your host. We're gonna have a fun morning, obviously, with some wonderful speakers. And of course, there's just so much they have to share. And of course, those of you who don't know who I am, you know, what I do, I'm a strategic management consultant, and I basically help people solve problems in their businesses, you know, and try to be a little creative and innovative the way in which I address those issues. But the topics we're going to talk about today covers some interesting areas in business that I think is very important, and also in life too. So it's kind of like life and business at the same time. And so we have three guests that are presenting today. The first is Gabor Holch. Is it pronounced correctly, Holch? Gabor?
Actually, I pronounce it Holch.
Holch, okay.
That's right.
So Gabor Holch is here, and he hails from, let's see, you hail from both Shanghai. You're gonna tell a story a little bit about Shanghai. And then you also are currently, are you in the UK now, or are you in Hungary originally?
I'm actually in Budapest, Hungary, where I originally come from.
So Gabor is in Hungary. And then, of course, you know, later we're going to talk about Vlady's book that basically is staged in Hungary, right? So you guys have some things in common, you know, especially with this issue about Dracula, to be or not to be, you know, a vampire. That is the question, right? Who was he? And then we also have Cathy Fyock, who's is this wonderful, you know, speaker, you know, author, preparer. You know, she kind of prepared people for you know, presenting their work with them, both in the written language and also in the spoken language. And so Cathy is going to be with us and going to tell us her story. And then, of course, piece de résistance, we have Professor Ancis and Victoria Ancis, who will basically talk about their wonderful book that tells this story about, you know, life and about making effective decisions as you progressively go through. So with no further ado, we will start with Gabor, because I'd like to, you know, hear more about, you know, what he's done and what he's accomplishing with this process and his new book that he's bringing out shortly too. So he's going to talk to us about his new book too. So Gabor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And how long do I have, or will you just stop me when it's quite enough?
5 minutes roughly, you know.
All right. So my name is Gabor Holch, and I spent the last 20 years coaching international executives in intercultural skills. Basically, I help otherwise successful executives after their transition from east to west or west to east, either if they are Western executives in Asia or Asian executives promoted to global positions in Western multinational companies. And this is exactly where the book comes from. So I'm just quickly going to share with you the site that introduces the book. It is based on about 20 interviews with high-level executives in large multinational companies, called Dragon Suit: The Golden Age of Expatriate Executives in China. So actually, you know, I spend most of my time as a coach, advisor, and trainer in intercultural leadership. And I often heard that while China is a fascinating place, and it is an amazing place for business as well, and there is an awful lot of attention on China, but the voices of the individual expat managers in China were somewhat neglected. And this is unfortunate for two reasons. One of them is because they are the ones who are basically holding up these enormous business successes of international companies in China. But also when anything is changing, then these are the people we should really go to. You know, reliable information out of China is fairly scarce, but these are people who have been there for 3, 5, 15, 20 years. They are very familiar with the country. They know how it works. So I wanted to make sure that these voices are heard in the book. I interviewed them. If you scroll down a little bit on the introductory page, which I am right after I share with you what I'm sharing right now, I'm going to share with you the link where you can find this introductory page. And then you will see that the book follows the logic or the, let's say, the time order of a typical expat assignment. So I first asked them, what was your first impression before you went to China, but you knew you would go there? What did you know about living and working in China? Arriving, meeting your team for the first time, putting your kids in school, then starting to lead people. And also I deal with issues that bother people even before they come to China, such as limited internet access, pollution, huge cultural differences, both inside and outside of work. And then finally, I spent the last chapter on management localization, which means that multinational companies deliberately replace multinational executives with local ones, how it is going to affect China as an expat destination, and who are going to be the next generation of expats in China, and who are going to, I mean, how are they going to be different? My coaching work and my writing work kind of cross-pollinate each other. So I already started a coaching program that is based on the findings of the book, of all the success secrets that these people were kind enough to share with me. And some of the names you will find at the bottom of the page. I think it is a good reference. And I very, very much look forward to your questions and thoughts, not only you in the call, but anybody who's watching the video and would like to reach out.
Well, you know, Gabor, one of the things that I found was fascinating about you and about what you were writing about in terms of your various clients and expats. You know, I've worked with some expats, you know, in Hong Kong. And, you know, what's interesting is that, you know, as we transition with politics and our economics and how they clash, you know, that question of, you know, how much do I know, and do I know enough about the dynamics, you know? And so, especially with the pandemic, you know, having hit center stage here, and it started there actually in December, and then it evolved here, and we finally decided in March that it's official, we should engage, we should address this issue. It was an interesting challenge for expats, you know.
Oh, interesting is an understatement. Yes, I mean, I coached people who went on a brief Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year is usually in February, went on a brief New Year vacation back to the United States where they came from, and they never managed to return to China again. I met people who went with small suitcases to the Philippines to just spend 5 days on vacations and never return to China again. Also, the other way around, there were expats who stayed in China, and then they were cut off from headquarters, they were cut off from families for 3 years. So it was with the people I interviewed, and also myself, who was separated from my family for more than half a year twice during this period. It was a very, very dramatic period that irreversibly changed the way, as you said, dynamics, the way China works as an expat destination and investment destination for international companies. So, you know, we are not getting back to, using air quotes, normal again. We are living in a different world when it comes to business in China now. So I also published an article on Asia Power Watch, which was called "Why Business with China Will Never Be the Same Again." I really believe it won't.
Right. You know, I agree with you 100%. And, you know, and it's coming that way. The good news is that it's starting to open up now, and, you know, people are starting to travel more freely. And so that's the good news, you know, but there's still this residual effect, because we're experiencing it here, even in the United States, with some of the things that we have going on here as a result of mental health issues. And so we have to thank Gloria for providing a book that will keep people on track and say, stay focused, stay focused. So that's a good news. So thanks, Gabor. We'll have a chance to take questions later, but I also now want to introduce Cathy Fyock, and Cathy's going to share her story with us and about her new book that's going to be, you know, hitting the streets soon.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I've written now several books on writing. I'm the author of 12, soon to be 12 books, 6 of them on the subject of writing and how to use your book. The one that was featured in the promotion for this is my book, The Speaker Author, Sell More Books and Book More Speeches. But my other books are on actually how to get it written. And my forthcoming book is titled The Writer Crisis Hotline, which is sort of an advice column of how to get over the hurdles and obstacles that authors typically face when they're writing their books. I am a big believer in the power of a book. I know that books can open doors. Books position you as the authority, and books will absolutely create opportunities for more speaking, consulting, coaching, and establishing your thought leadership in the world. One of the strategies in my book, The Speaker Author, is about gifting books, because sometimes the best strategy you can use is not to sell your book, but to actually gift your book. You'll make more money sometimes if you gift your book to the right people. Now, I don't believe in just indiscriminately giving out book truckloads of your book. That's not really smart. But gifting them very strategically to people who know you, who have worked with you before, can be a wonderful strategy. One of my clients who just finished her book last fall decided she would use this strategy because she was sort of rebranding herself, and her book was a wonderful way to rebrand herself. So she basically gifted the book. I think she gifted about 50 books to executives, thought leaders, individuals that knew her work. And many of these folks were folks she had worked with before. But I should also add that she beautifully gift wrapped these. It was not just something she stuck in a mailer envelope. She beautifully wrapped them, sent it with a personal note, also talking about the kinds of work that she was doing. And because of this strategy, she got 5 full fee paid speaking engagements, plus sold a whole bunch of books to a whole bunch of people. And that is the strategy that I think is really, really smart. So that's what my book, The Speaker Author, talks more about, and I think would be helpful for any author who's trying to monetize and create an ROI for their books. I'm also a big believer in the power of affirmations. And I thought when Alex and I were talking, I thought it might be fun to share with you my writer's pledge. For those of you who are working on books or always working on the next book, I thought it might be fun to share with you my writer's pledge. This is something I share with my clients and my group coaching practice, and whenever I do a workshop or program. So I'll share my screen and share with you the writer's pledge. And by the way, this is something that we usually say in unison together at the beginning of our calls or workshops or programs. I just did a program in Indianapolis 2 days ago, and we said together the writer's pledge. But here it is. I pledge that I will use my power to make today a fantastic day. I will block writing time on my calendar, and I will honor that time commitment and hold it as sacred creative time. I pledge I will not allow my negative voice to guide my thinking or stop my creative process. I will surround myself with people who love me and support my writing. I pledge to tell my story, to share my experiences with authenticity and without apology. I know that in telling my story, I can provide others with the gifts of hope, wisdom, and joy. I pledge that I will continue to work so that I gain clarity and focus for my readers, audiences, and clients. Then I can continue to make the world a better place, one word at a time. So if any of you are interested in receiving a copy of my writer's pledge, I'd be delighted to send it to you. If you will just send me an email. I will put my email in the chat, and would welcome hearing from any of you about your writing journeys. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Cathy. You know, what I think is what was interesting about our conversation to me, among other things, you know, that we had discussed, like with Ann Landers versus, you know, the whole thing with the Sun Times. was that, you brought, you have an interesting perspective that you carry with, your process. The pledge, I think, is a very powerful way to help people become more intentional at the beginning, not at the end, And so by influencing the energy associated with this attempt to put something together that people are going to receive and feast on, it's almost like food for the mind. So
Yes.
Great cooks, I like to watch these stories about these gourmet chefs on Netflix, and then just watching their process is pretty amazing, and so that's what you do. You're kind of like assembling, because, my process was kind of interesting for me, first time I started, and I wasn't sure how I was going to, assemble my material, but finally I was able to just settle down in it. And so thank you for sharing that pledge. So now we have the professor, Ancis and Victoria, who would share with us their wonderful story about, progressing through life and making effective decisions, as you mentioned. And Cathy, this relates to what you're talking about here, and starting early and starting at the beginning and saying, hey, look, we're going to make sure we do the right things at the right times for the right reasons. So you're managing that whole effect. And so now, both Professor and Victoria are going to take us on a wonderful journey. Share with us, how you do this in an interesting way.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank Doug. We want to thank Doug for the ability and the permission to use the platform. And most importantly, I personally want to thank Gloria for her unconditional commitment to bringing us to be here. Gloria, thank you so much, because without you, this would not exist. Thank you again. So let me give you a 3-phase in our book. The book is called The Journey of Choices, the journey of life, yes? And often we don't think we have choices, but it's the journey of choices. It's called the seed of knowledge, because we do provide an outcome in terms of like a Monopoly game, yes? How do you win a Monopoly game? Well, you win a Monopoly game by knowing the rules. And how do you win the game of life? By knowing the rules. And guess what? If you don't know the rules of life, the door is going to be shut in your face many times until you learn. So the first phase of why we wrote the book, we actually, we are a consulting group, but we've been coaching people and training people for over 40 years. Our company came about in 1981. We trained about 84,000, 90,000 people. So it's not millions, but it's definitely a good number. It was really interesting. And they were personal growth program in terms of how do I become more effective in my life, abandoning those ineffective behaviors of the past that limited my ability to do what I want to do. So what we found out after about probably 10, 15,000 is there was a common thread. 80% of the people who attended all exhibited the same barriers. Belief system, ineffective, comfort zone, they like to be in, they didn't like to be out, not abandoning the past, and all this stuff. So so after about 84,000 people and getting older, I'm old, and the question is, I'm much older than what you think. In fact, I'll give you my statement so you will know how old I am. I was born in 1942 in October, so I was 80 years old last October. I'll be 81 this October. So I may look younger, but I'm not. I put a lot of makeup.
No,
so what's happening is we decided to leave a legacy. And Victoria said, instead of writing a Tony Robbins book in how to, which people put on the side of the night table that they don't look. I remember how attracted I was when I was a young one to fantasy books. So we wrote actually a fantasy educational book. And if you were at the end of the book, we have a summary of the 13 rules of the game of life. But each chapter, 13 chapters, deal with magic, wizards, and I'll let Victoria talk about it because she's a very past generation Cherokee Indian, so she's a storyteller. And the way she tells a story, she's much, much better than I am. So Victoria, just give us a brief shot at the book.
okay, thank you, Roberto, and thank you everyone for being here. And I just want to acknowledge each and every one of you for your accomplishments in writing a book. It's not an easy thing. Our journey has taken us about 10 years, believe it or not. And we started, when we decided to write the book, we didn't want to do like a how-to book, like a Tony Robbins, as Roberto mentioned. We wanted to do something out of the box. So we did a fictional story where talking animals and different entities share our lessons that we teach in our seminars. And so the book starts out in Wales at about 1200, and there's two main characters, Bowen and Alice. And their uncle Merlin, who is Merlin the wizard, sends a raven to Yorth, their guardian, saying, I'm going to ascend, and the kids have to come to the City of Knowledge because we have a treasure chest that the king and queen left for them. And it has all sorts of things, and the three of us have to be there to open the chest. So I'm going to send my knight, Cadron, who will escort the kids on a journey for, it should take about 2 weeks by horseback. Actually, it ends up taking 25 years. And there's so many different, there's the battle of the evil master, there's dragons, there's the wise owl who shares lessons, there's Lizzie, the two-tone lizard. It's just filled with a lot of magic in the book. And also our lessons, which ultimately lead to the 13 rules of the game of life.
And let me give you an example, the flavor of what the rules are. And I have a question for you. Do you think you're able to see reality as it is? Let me repeat it. Do you think you can see reality as it is? I can tell you this, about 98% of people we trained in our programs, of the 84,000, so what they saw was filter reality, was perceptions of reality. Our belief systems and our expectation do not allow us to see life as it is. So the question that we have for in our program is, well, if you can see reality for what it is, how can you, from a personal and business point of view, arrive at certain plans? Well, the plans seem to be a reflection of what we think the reality is. So part of the first chapter in the book, the chapter number 1, discusses reality and perceptions, how ineffective behaviors really do not allow us to have what I call a decision-making life, whereby we make decisions that are ours. Most of us behave what? Behave the way our parents taught us, our friends taught us, what we got hurt in the past by. So we are really not free to make decisions, or although we call and we say we have a free decision making, we don't. So the book addresses that, addresses comfort zone, addresses how actually to achieve what's important to you. It addresses how to make a positive difference in life. So it's an incredible book. Again, wow. 84,000 people contributed to that. Wow. And the story is right there for all of us to benefit. And the problem is, and then I'll close down, Alex, the problem is that our parents didn't know how to be parents. And we don't know how to be parents. Nobody told us. So we teach the best we can. But guess what? The best we can is not really the best it can be. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Professor and Victoria, for basically introducing us to and exposing us to these years of work that you guys have done to assemble this body of work and knowledge, to help people understand, what actually happens behind the scenes, behind the curtain, of our lives. And so, very similar to, I've actually focused more on this in terms of paradigmatically about the transition and what happens when you reach that sort of like that inflection, if you will, in your life in terms of saying, do I go left or do I go right? And so what you've done in this book, based on your description, is allowed people to giving people this interesting journey to follow as a template for progressively, symbolically making these effective decisions about their lives, which I think is wonderful, which we all need. And of course, the parenting issue is something that everybody has wrestled with at some point in their lives. So that's another interesting area that I see you cover very well with this wonderful story that makes it user-friendly, if that makes any sense, or psychological, emotional user-friendliness.
Yeah. And Alex, the purpose of the book is to give people a choice.
Right.
Really authentically do not believe we do, based on our ineffective behaviors and based in really unwarranted expectations. We do not have a choice in life until, call it enlightenment, call it finding, call it whatever you want to call it, until you have some guidance. And that's the purpose of the book. Give people a choice.
Right. That's fantastic. Now, I know
Alex,
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Victoria. Yes.
pardon me. As a real quick footnote,
Sure.
I'm a graphic artist also, and I've spent the last 10 years on creating color custom pictures. It's a 2-volume book, volume 1 and 2, and there's 111 custom pictures, color in each book.
Wow.
And the book is going to be very, very interesting because it's subliminally, the pictures tell the story as well.
Yes. You know, and some of the pictures that I've seen and the characters, you know, of course, in our conversation, you know, Victoria and I spent a little time talking. I have to say, Doctor, she's a very interesting lady. And so we spent this time talking about all the imagery and all the work that was done to create these images that allow people to have this very ethereal experience, if that makes any sense to anyone, you know. But most importantly, what I see here is that what do all of our authors have in common today? They all have something very important in common, and that's moving people forward. You know, Gabor, you know, he's looking at the intercultural challenges that expats have, you know, and it doesn't matter where they are, if they're in the United States or if they're in Shanghai, if they're in, you know, in Hungary. You know, everybody has an issue that they have to deal with, and everybody has a story to tell. You know, Cathy, you know, you provide this wonderful process for engaging people and helping people collect their thoughts in such a way that they can actually say, wow, I actually have a message. You know, some of us, when we first started, we didn't think we had a message. And then we realized we have something unique to sell. I said, there's so many books than what used to be Borders books, et cetera, but now they're all online. You know, where do I fit? It's like, just jump in the pool and just splash. And then, of course, you know, Doctor, you know, with both Victoria, and, you know, you two have brought this wonderful story that allows us to, you know, maybe, you know, in the privacy of our own home and our own mind, be able to make this whole transition into this fantasy world of improving our lives at the same time. So I say thank you, wonderful authors. I now leave the floor to those of you who would like to ask questions.
I have a question from Gabor. Gabor, you wrote an incredible book, from what I can see from the chapters. When I was an advisor to Philips in Holland, and I was an advisor to 3 Japanese companies and 2 Korean companies in the US, their practice was to actually turn over their top executive every 3 years. And so the people that got here, the reason for that was to actually controlling the foreign enterprise based on the expectation policy and procedures that they had in the home country at headquarters. And that really didn't work too well. So Gabor, tell us a little bit your insight and your experience in that, if you don't mind.
Well, this is a dilemma. I mean, I love history, and I like to put everything into a historical context. If you've ever done StrengthsFinder, it's the strengths called context. So ever since empires like the Roman Empire, the ancient Persian, Chinese empires, this has been a dilemma. Do you leave people in place so that they become more familiar with the customs, with the people, with the circumstances, but then you also run the risk that they develop a kind of silo thinking and they lose touch with the rest of the world? Or do you move them around, basically help them build loyalty with an abstract entity like an empire or a multinational company? But then it also means that they are always operating from a mild outsider mentality wherever they are. So many of the companies that I work with, they also run both risks at the same time. Over time, this has changed a lot. I arrived in China in 2002, when localization on higher management levels was the name of the game. Companies were very hopeful that it will help them to reduce cost, that it will help them to how do you say, to encourage a new generation of local Chinese managers who will step not only higher positions in China, but also international positions worldwide. And it didn't go so well as they expected it. And there are many different reasons for that. One of them is that traveling restrictions stayed in place. So if you have a Chinese manager in a certain international position and the day after tomorrow is supposed to hop on a plane and, you know, participate in a conference or a meeting, is not so easy. The second one is actually measurably, the more clout China has in the world, the less willing Chinese people are to learn English and other foreign languages, which is a hindrance. So China is terribly underrepresented in the global executive community. For example, if you compare it with India or the Philippines or Mexico, therefore, over time, what we can see now is that there is a very strong cohort of Chinese managers running the Chinese business of global multinational companies, but they didn't manage to grow up to international level. And actually, I work with these executives. I coach Chinese managers promoted to international positions in these multinational companies and their superiors, who are usually international foreign managers. And I see all kinds of, hopeful and not so hopeful aspects of this work. But this work continues. It is going to be continue because there are lots of very ambitious and very smart Chinese managers who would like to jump over the hurdles just the opposite way as the traditional multinational manager would.
You know, Gabor, we actually have someone that spent a couple of years in China, maybe a few. And so Todd, you're online. Jump in the game here to the water, man, because you know you spend a lot of time, and you're going to be talking about Vlady's book later on. But this is an opportunity for you to share your perspective, because in our last visit, you know, with our author's visit, you was talking about some challenges that people have with what's happening right now. And so it would be interesting for you to share that perspective on the other side of the pond. You're on mute right now.
Sure, I'm happy to share a little bit. What Gabor is talking about is, you know, it's a pretty profound cultural situation. And I understand what he's talking about. I was there during that period. I was actually one of working in China as one of the middle management managers prior to China, the Chinese government deciding that now we want to start to move in the Chinese management to do a middle management situation. That was in about the 90s. And that's actually when I started to lose my opportunity for work, because I was taking advantage of that middle management foreign company work opportunity situation. And so after that, then I started to get involved with doing more upper management positions. And so, yeah, the Chinese people, granted, they are not the greatest at learning English. It's a challenging language for them, just like learning Mandarin is a challenging language for Westerners. They're very different worldviews. And I think that's something that I bring out in my own experience and my writings, is the vastly different worldviews between China and the West, and how we misunderstand so much because we're interpreting it from our own perspectives rather than having the ability to interpret their world from their perspectives. And so I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we have with China. But you know, what he's doing is great. It's good that he's helping the Chinese and the Western companies to better understand each other. And I think there's a big need for that. And so I appreciate what he's doing. And I know he's been over there working at it for a long time. And I know he's been doing a good job working with foreign companies coming into China. And then also, as I just learned today, with Chinese who are going to work in other countries.
You know, and here locally,
it's a profound conversation.
Right. You know, and here locally, we have what? A large Taiwanese semiconductor plant. that has been constructed that's basically, you know, being commissioned soon to be functional. And so this awareness is becoming increasingly important in our space here in the Phoenix area, and of course dispelling some of the cultural myths and issues. And so so this is a wonderful time for us to look at different ways to communicate and share perspectives on how to coexist with each other in a very functional way. And that's what I talk about in my book. That's what Dr. Ancis and Victoria talk about in their book. And then, you know, Cathy facilitates engagement in terms of how to do it better. You know, so we're all in the same boat, and we're all trying from different sides of the continent. And so that's part of what the whole Global Chamber experience is all about, is bringing all these different perspectives together so that we can function as a human unit, as opposed to being divisive with our perspectives, that we all are the same. So we just speak different languages.
I think the divisiveness comes from lack of understanding.
Yes. So is there anyone else who'd like to ask questions? You know, please feel free to step up before we make our next move. And of course, we're going to talk about Vlady's book soon. It's like, you know, this Dracula guy.
Talking about Vlady, I concur with both Gabor and Todd, because I've been working in China for the last 30 years plus, going quite a few times back and forth in between China and Los Angeles, developing you know, my own business, but also doing consulting in China for a major trade fair called the Canton Fair. And I understand what Gabor says in that aspect. Although most of the people that I meet, they do speak English, but the mentality, like Todd says, you know, is very different. And the Americans in particular going to China, they feel that they have a leg up on the Chinese because they are Westerners and don't try to understand the Chinese mentality and culture, and make terrible mistakes in business based on that. So both what Gabor and Todd are saying, it's amazing, and we have to keep on educating not only the Chinese to understand us, but for us to understand them.
Absolutely. So interesting what you're saying, Vlady and Gabor and Todd. Our experience, we had probably, I would say, of the 84,000 people, we had about maybe 500 or 700 were actually of Chinese origin. And what was really interesting is the thinking of the Chinese is so different culturally from the way we think. One of the things that is for us that we found out is the issue of trust and knowing the other person. The Chinese, when they first meet you, they don't trust anyone. They certainly don't trust Westerners. In fact, the Mandarin world for Westerners is really the foreign devils. So, and they mean it. These are not the cute devils, these are the bad devils. So in our experiences, when we did the trainings, is that it took us a very substantially long time for them to understand that we were really providing information and processing and coaching that would be to their best advantage. And you know, when we got a breakthrough, when we told them, you don't have to do anything we suggest. Try it out. If it works, keep it. And all of a sudden that shifted. The Chinese likes to be in control of the outcome. If they are not in control, you can't do business in long term and short term. And the other thing is, you never ask a Chinese, Gabor confirmed this, and you can never ask a Chinese, can you do this? Because the answer is yes, we can. Mm-hmm. The question to the Chinese is to ask, okay, can you please send me a sample of what you're doing, for example, for making shoes, so I can actually look into it. Then you can make your own evaluation regarding the ability of them to produce in time.
Well, you know, Professor, what's interesting about that too is that you have an established culture for over 5,000 years plus years, right? So they have their way. And so what's happened is that you have other cultures that have established, you know, ways, and that's where I think the conflict is people not sharing or at least being able to solicit exchange of perspectives with respect to those established indigenous cultures. But that's another, wonderful topic. We could probably organize a wonderful topic to discuss these issues at length. We don't have the time right now.
And by the
but
way,
before we move
Vlady,
off of that,
Vlady new book, and it's fascinating because remember Marco Polo in China. I'm from Italy, right? So there's a connection between Italy and trade and China. Well, Vlady's new book is going to be about travel of Jewish travelers and tradespeople to China.
that's correct.
And the full understanding of the Chinese is not easy if you allow your brain to think the way we do. So the way to do it is to become an observer of behaviors, and therefore you can actually reach some decent, solid conclusions at the end.
Right, because that's
So
the
well
perspective.
spoken.
That's the perspective of the Tao, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a Taoist, mindset, and that's been around for a long time.
Yep.
So another topic, I think, we've got a wonderful topic that we can have here and explore those areas, interdependencies. But I still want to focus on Victoria a little bit, because Victoria also, before we walk away from this wonderful talk, because Victoria has been introducing this particular way of developing graphics that is pervasive now in terms of, what's being used with AI technology, et cetera. And so I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but that's another unique feature that she has introduced to that book that I think is so relevant to being able to tie those different lines of communication to becoming more effective with the articulation with respect to your imagery and graphics. And so again, Cathy could probably appreciate that too, because she's talking about speakers, et cetera. So now I know we have to make our little transition, but hey, thank you, wonderful, speakers. You guys have been great. We have something more to talk about, so I'm putting it out there. So let's have this, maybe schedule something or plan something, have a deeper discussion about these issues, because these are issues that are affecting us now. We have quiet quitting, we have rage quitting. Why? It's a cultural issue.
Yep.
It's the cultural differences from the management level, et cetera. And I talk about some of those subjects in my new book, not to plug myself or anything, but leading and thriving. We need to take away that resistance, and the resistance is basically not understanding each other in a way that we can actually function constructively together moving forward. So on that note, thank you very much. I think it's time for us to make a transition soon. Is that right, Gloria? How are we doing on time? You're muted, Gloria.
Yeah, we need to transition to the book review so we have time.
Right. Yes. So thank you very much, authors. Wonderful discussion. Thank you, audience members, for your participation. And I guess, Todd, you have the floor.
Okay, well, I'll take a seat. So I'm here to review Vlady's book. And from the beginning, it was something I just got really drawn into. It's a really intriguing and kind of gripping. It just is sort of like I realized that I was reading it and I was like wanting to read more. And so I was really enjoying the whole experience, and the journey is really what it is. I promised Vlady that I would do a book review for him on Amazon. And so what I've done is I've basically taken that promise and turned it into today's book review. So I want to just read the book review that I'm going to be putting up on Amazon for him. And so it's not going to take me 15 minutes. So unless you want me to read really slow. So Vlady's book lays out a fascinating story that connects lives spanning 500 years in time. The story takes place in both the present 20th century and 500 years in the past, in the author's native land of Romania. The author smoothly transitions between the present and hundreds of years in the past, where characters intermingle as if there's no time distance separating them, some living in both sequences of time. But the present and the past are accessible to only a few in order to accomplish their destiny. The story begins in Romania in the year 1967 with three friends sharing a common interest of a story etched deep in their cultural psyche, the story of King Vlad Dracul. 3 boys embark on a voyage to a castle located in the mountain range of northern Romania, where a sequence of encounters leads them back in time to discover the truth of the man known as King Dracul and uncover the secrets long hidden about his life, death, and return. For the 3 boys, it is more than an adventure in culture. It is a rite of passage that leads them to meet people along the way, people they were destined to meet, some having waited hundreds of years for the arrival of these young men, as they are taken on a long and arduous trek of continuing the age-old story into the future. The secrets they seek will be revealed through magic and bravery, but first the teenagers must accompany their newfound friend Babaluka to guide them back in time to meet the storied king and to acquire the skills they need to survive the days ahead, 500 years in the past. So that is my written book review that I'm going to put up on Amazon. So I just thought I would read it.
Oh, that's awesome, Todd.
But it's a really fascinating book.
Very nice. Very nice. Vlady, let me ask you a question. When I start reading it, I didn't get to the end yet, but I don't like to read the end first because otherwise I don't finish the book. So did you, in your characters, did you actually change the character beliefs and points of views as they were 500 years ago to the one there you moved to modern life, or did you retain the same continuity?
Well, the characters coming from the 20th century into the 15th century, well, you come with your ideas and preconceptions of the times that you're born in, but then you face the reality of a completely different time and space. And it's exactly what we're talking about, us and the Chinese, we have to accommodate and understand each other. So we have to learn. Therefore, the characters, they do change and they do adopt the way of life by choice or no choice of the 15th century.
Vlady, can you hold your book up?
If I hold my book up,
everybody can see the cover. Oh, there you go.
Well, I forgot to bring it, but anyway, yeah, that's.
It's a beautiful book, by the way. Very well done. We bought the hard copy because I wanted to retain it. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it's. I made several changes, so I don't know when either one of you bought it. The last changes that I made was in November, I believe, where I added a glossary of places and names.
We have the glossary, yeah.
So you have that one. That's the beauty of Amazon. You think of something that you forgot, boom, you change it, you republish it. So.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm halfway through the book. I'm not a fast reader, and I typically do not read fiction. That is not my forte, but I am reading this one. But Vlady, I am very fascinated with his mother, Iona. She keeps me engaged. Just her story and just what she's gone through to protect her son. It's just amazing. Again, the Queen Mother is the one that I'm really relating to.
Well, the Queen Mother of Babaluka, the wife of Dracula, not the Queen Evil Mother of the
one called Iona. Ilona?
Ilona, not because there is a Queen Mother that is the mother of the Sultan that is
okay.
I have a question, Alex, if you will allow me, for Cathy. It has been bugging me, but I didn't ask because I didn't want to interrupt. Cathy, one of the things we found out in our programs, and is in the book, is the difficulty for people to abandon past behaviors that were not effective and keep repeating them in life for the future. Now, when you do your book, do you have any recommendation for people that have not been successful speaker authors to become successful?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, so people have a very hard time to abandon the past. So the definition of insanity is hoping for a different future when they still do the same thing you've done in the past, right? So I know this about authors. Authors are not typically public speakers. They're good authors, and good authors are not necessarily speakers. So did you address then in your book in terms of giving guidance?
Well, most of the authors that I work with are in fact speaking, or they're writing because they want to speak more. They want to establish their thought leadership. They want to do this. So I've not seen this personally in my experience with my authors. But what I do talk with my authors about is always thinking about it from the perspective of the you language, using always you language to communicate what you're wanting your reader to understand and to know, and to share stories. I think that's a great way of saying this is what you should do without saying this is what you should do. It's a very indirect way of showing the truth or showing best practices. Or even the converse is to share, bad experiences without saying, don't do this, or you shouldn't do this. If you tell a story with a negative consequence, it paints the picture very well. So I'm a big believer in those things. I hope that's helpful for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Because we were thinking in terms of how to market our book, and we are going to do seminars, 13 seminars for the 13 rules of life, but also we decided to, because of my technology background, we decided to start creating games, because games are very habit changing. And so the purpose of the book is to actually allow people to have a choice in life. So we're going to be actually hiring a couple of game companies, and it's going to be really interesting. But there are so many ways to be able to bring the message to the public. Alex, what do you think? How are you doing with your, what do? You send books out and get speaking engagement for your books, or how do you do that?
Well, my progression there has been, capacity. Sometimes you have to be very careful to not open doors you can't fulfill, and so I'm very deliberate with my engagement for that reason, because the material that I'm covering is a little on the technical side, especially from a business perspective. And of course, what all of the topics that we've covered, like with Gabor, for example, the intercultural issues and the dynamics. So what I like about what Gabor does is that he looks at the family and the work environment. Oftentimes we focus on the work environment and family comes second. And of course, what I like about your book, that you and Victoria have just over the years nurtured and cultivated, is that you give a perspective that allows that emotional, psychological, what do I want to call it? You guide them through the process, of
family well-being is the often neglected secret ingredient to successful expat postings. I hear so many stories. Companies collect, HR managers and the recruitment firms collect, but don't share the information. How many of the failed expat assignments get shipwrecked? But also there are the positive examples. If a family is well-adjusted, kids go to school, they make new friends, they can do an amazing job together. Right. We like it or not, it's teamwork.
Absolutely. And then Lanny has her hand up, so I think she has to contribute to this because she's a cultural person. So Lanny, you have the moment here. What can you share with us? What would you like to? You're muted. You're muted.
I just figured that part out. But actually, I have a question for Vlady, and that is, how did you come to write this story? What called you to do this particular book?
Well, it's a multiple answer, because it's not only that I was born in Romania and that's a mythical story over there, but I was trained as a historian. I got my BA in history in Romania and then my master's in archaeology in Israel. So history, it's kind of in my blood. But how the story started was kind of a very mild bedtime story to my kids about this character Babaluka that, you know, and Dracula, but not Dracula the vampire, because the poor guy was never a vampire. So I told them the story, you know, every single night until they, you know, they grew up and said, Dad, we don't want to listen to the story when I go to sleep, but encouraged me to put it down on paper.
Wow.
So it took me quite a few years to write it down. And obviously the story developed, you know, over the years as I was writing it. And basically the story that I was telling them back then is 90% different than it's in the book.
Wow. So thank you so much for that
But
question.
I'm writing the
Vlady.
sequel. So what I wanted to mention that I'm currently writing a book 2, the sequel to this story, where I take the characters in the 15th century, because that's where the book ends, in the 15th century into the Persian Empire, and from the Persian Empire into China of the 15th century. So that's book 2.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Vlady. So we look forward to, you know, for part 2, you know. We do have another series coming up, or at least a review that's coming up in May. So Professor, if you would, share with us about, you know, what's going to happen next month.
You know, I'm going to be following exactly what the Alex Devereux model is. Get in touch with the people who are going to be presenting, asking them what the purpose of the book is, what the source of the book is, the reasoning for the book is, and then being able to be a better moderator. Because you did a fantastic job today. Thank you.
Thank you. So who are your guests? You know, who will be speaking, presenting, you know, these wonderful people that you're going to be.
I'm totally a blank because I really don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
I know
Okay.
that my
Okay, I'm going to announce
Go ahead.
announce who they are. I have my list. Maxine, one of them is here. Say hi, Maxine.
Hey, Maxine.
And we also have Claus, and I'm probably going to say his last name wrong. Wehag. It's Wehage. How do you pronounce?
Wehaga. Is he here?
No.
He'll be next
Oh,
month.
okay. I was
And
just
we also
emailing
have-
him on something else. That's a very strange coincidence. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And Doug pronouncing Gunja. But I'm not sure how to pronounce
Gunjan
his-
Bagla?
Yeah, he's the other one.
Okay, cool. He's amazing.
Okay, and since Maxine's here, Maxine, would you like to just say a few seconds about what you're going to talk about?
Hi, guys. So thanks a lot, Gloria, for opening the floor to me. So I'm going to talk about my second book, which is about creating psychological safety for teams. It was written pre-pandemic, and it's interesting that it's still relevant post-pandemic. And I think that's a challenge a lot of people are having now, you know, quiet quitting, people who are the Great Resignation, a lot of those themes around how do we engage people, especially in an online space. So I'm rereading the book as we speak so that I can be really ready to make it more relevant for this post-COVID period.
Wow. Wow, that's great.
And then I think we're back to Doug to just do a final thank you, whatever you do in the review.
Okay, cool. No, thank you. I'd like to make just 3 quick comments. First of all, always amazing. So thank you, Alex. The Beauty and the Beast combination of the Ancises are always extraordinary, and really thank all the authors today for joining in. I want to recognize 3 people that have been in the audience: Vlady, Gloria, and Pael, for being part of the 2023 Global Innovation and Excellence Award program. Every Global Chamber member is extraordinary. All of you who are members, almost all of you are extraordinary. And so it's really tough to come up with an award program that identifies super excellence, but that's what we try to do. So I want to recognize all 3 of you for your innovation and excellence, and just keep up the great work. And it was so inspiring, our 5 conversations, to hear your stories. It's amazing. So thank you so much for that. And then finally, one of the book authors, I'm not sure if he's scheduled, Gloria, is Shirzad Shamin scheduled yet, the positive intelligence?
I don't think so. I need to
Okay.
get that information.
So he wrote a book, Positive Intelligence. They're a member, and we now have through the 28th an offer to go through their Positive Intelligence program at a deep discount for members of Global Chamber. So check that out. It was in the newsletter that went out yesterday or the day before. It'll go out on Monday. If you haven't learned more about it, you should. I talk about on the blog post how it really has saved my life. Literally has saved or will save my life in terms of how much impact it's had on me. So definitely check out Positive Intelligence and PQ. And also, Gloria, happy to work with you to get Shirzad involved as well. So thanks everybody for joining today. Back to you, Alex, or back to you, Gloria, whoever has the ball here.
Well, I want to, it'll be Alex last, but I want to thank Alex for a superb job. Everyone give him applause for a superb job. Okay. Secondly, we do need one of you, our authors, to do a review on another author for May. So somebody would, if you've read one of the other, we want an author to review an author. That's the whole idea. That's what you're experiencing. But we do need one for May. So if somebody would contact me as a volunteer, that would be great. And back to you, Alex.
Well, thank you, Gloria. Thank you, wonderful authors, and thank you, participants, you know, for being here. You guys have made this a wonderful, you know, hour for me. And of course, the others that have shared the wonderful stories. We have more. We have more here. So, Doug, I'm putting us on notice here. Like we want to have a session. We can talk out some of these cultural dynamics that we were talking about before. It's on the table. We need to have conversation about these things. So.
Yeah. We just did the Victoria Reynoldson cultural discussion yesterday. She did a workshop. So yeah, absolutely. That was an interesting conversation, and all the global tribe loves that, right? We love to embrace it and understand more. We never stop learning. Like we always keep learning. And so if in the meantime, I recommend all of you to check out Victoria Reynoldson, who's a member of Global Chamber in the UK, the workshop she did. I don't know if anybody else here went to it, but it was awesome. So thanks, Alex.
Wow. And thank you, everyone. We've taken you a few minutes over the hour, but we appreciate you guys sticking with us. And I want to thank again my authors and you know, who have represented themselves so well and shared their wonderful words of wisdom and gems of wonder. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of
Thank
your day.
you, Alex. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye now.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ciao.